I do.
Hi, I'm Casey.
Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, White House Watch. Is it all over but the crying? We're going to take a look, an update on the Maryland US Senate race, the Congressional District 6 race, the District 8 race, the Montgomery County Board of Education election, and finally, is government-loving Montgomery County poised to adopt term limits? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Dean of Democratic Politics, Sam Statlin, Republican activist, Phil Bell, former Majority Leader of the Maryland House of Delegates, John Herson, and political strategist, Susan Heltmus. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. According to many, the race for the White House is all but over, and Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States. Nonetheless, there are those that cling to their belief in miracles, and as the drip, drip, drip of the WikiLeaks disclosures continues to show the Clinton campaign and the candidate in unfavorable light, they're hoping things will change. Phil Bell, with 10 days remaining in the race, does your man Donald Trump still have a chance?
Well, absolutely, Casey. Look, I believe in miracles, but Donald Trump doesn't need a miracle. All he needs is to do the work of a candidate, to get out his message, which he's been doing a great job with, holding terrific rallies, talking about important issues, and resonating. This is a great opportunity, and he has a better than 50% chance of being the next president of the United States.
Phil, some of the polls, though, may seem to disagree with that point of view. Certainly in the battleground states, he's not doing as well. So what gives you this faith that he's going to connect with the American people?
Well, I disagree with that again. In a couple of battleground states, Florida and Ohio, which are very important, he's been surging there. You see that he's been reaching out, spending a lot of time in some of these other battleground states. And the other important thing, pointed out by Zero Hedge, but we've seen it even more with the national polls, oversampling Democrats way beyond what their voter registration is in any of these places. So that says that when you strip that out, it gets a lot closer, and we've seen that happening in recent days.
Sam, clearly the WikiLeaks disclosures have hurt Mrs. Clinton, but will they damage her enough to make a difference?
3 weeks in a row. This race is over, Phil. It's over. Donald doesn't stand a chance. I agree with you, the polls. Some are highs, some are lows, some are in between. But when you look at the turnout for early voting and you look at the turnout for absentee, obviously with a 2-to-1 majority here in Maryland, there's no way the man's going to come close. And he's not going to come close anywhere else. This race is over, folks.
But Sam, why do you think that early voting is an indicator? There are no results that are being disclosed. So why do you think that's dispositive of how the race is going?
Well, in Maryland, we have a 2-to-1 registration difference. So those people that are going to show up are going to be primarily Democrats with that kind of a majority. In Virginia, it might be a little bit even because the voting is more even. But a larger turnout will definitely favor Democrats. I think that's going to happen across the country.
But what about the enthusiasm factor? There is a lot of enthusiasm towards Donald Trump. His rallies are overwhelmingly filled. Why don't you think that's going to turn over and resonate to voters?
Because I think, as I said before, that his rallies are strictly theatrical. The man is terrific on stage. The man is a great actor. The guy knows how to manipulate media, and people show up to these purely for entertainment, as they did for the debates.
And I just want to add to what Sam said. If you look at the polls showing more Democrats are voting enthusiastically for Hillary Clinton than for Donald Trump. And that is an indicator.
How do you know that, Susan?
They did polls on it.
Susan, let me stop you because I was going to ask you a question about as the election day approaches. National polls show Hillary Clinton holding a lead over Donald Trump, but new polls in Nevada, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania show that Trump may be narrowing Clinton's lead. So why do you think that the race is over?
Well, he doesn't have a prayer in Pennsylvania. You're talking to someone who has spent 4 weekends door knocking for Secretary Clinton. I will be there pretty much most of
Pennsylvania.
the time. In Pennsylvania. In the suburbs of Montgomery County, which are the suburbs of Philadelphia. That county is wrapped up. I read an article in the Post today about the latest polls in the 3 counties that make a difference. He doesn't have a prayer. He is losing in Pennsylvania. You look at
He's losing in eastern liberal Pennsylvania,
and that's where the votes are.
The problem is, and Michael Moore, one of the liberals' heroes, yesterday summed up the reason for Donald Trump's popularity is because white middle class voters have been abandoned by the Democratic Party.
No,
and they're going to vote for. And
it isn't middle class. It's white male Republicans are realizing that they are losing control and power.
All right,
and
but
that's
I want to go to John.
That's
John,
that's not accurate at all.
Today, this afternoon, as we're taping, FBI Director Comey came out and said that he is reopening the investigation into the email scandals of Hillary Clinton. How bad will this hurt, and will this have an effect on the election?
Number one, he didn't say he's reopening the investigation.
What did he say?
He said it's a continuation of the investigation.
There
These terms are important, okay? It's an investigation of emails they found in a different investigation over the sex text things that our lovely congressman in New York did. And we don't know what those are. Apparently, the secretary, she is not the author of any of those emails.
And it's a whole different
And it's a different investigation. But I think, in some ways, and I'll probably be, crucified for this, I think he did the right thing. We are 11 days before the election. He has some new information. He put it out there. He needs to explain more about what that information is. I think that's important. Both campaigns are calling for that. Trump and the Clinton campaign are both calling for more information on what he's looking at because it's important. It's 11 days before the election. We don't actually know what they're looking at.
But doesn't this bring into question, once again, his earlier decision not to indict?
Look, I think that Mr. Comey has incredible integrity.
And he's
when before we found out about his decision on this, the Republicans, the Democrats all said this guy is A1. They were all defending him as the right guy to make this decision. And and then when he makes the decision, everybody goes crazy. And I just, let the FBI do their work. He's done the right thing to bring this information out. I think that's the right thing to do. It needs to be clarified. But, I think this is all baked into the cake, Casey. I honestly do. I think
I want to go to
it's
the
all over.
We got about 60 seconds left. Phil,
it's not
respond to this.
Thank you. It's not at all baked into the cake. It's a great example of why Hillary should not be president. Here you go, taking every step possible so that classified information, and there's no question that Comey wouldn't say, well, gee, here's 30,000 or however many thousand emails about
Phil,
yoga.
Wait a second now. What did she do that you now know after today that was illegal?
She took
what did she do?
Well, she did something that even Obama's favorite
we
general,
don't even know
even
what
Obama's
she
favorite
did.
general was put in jail.
Put
in jail for this.
Today.
How do you know it's not her
emails?
emails?
Do you hear all the white boys here? I'm glad these guys are having this debate. It's the same debate that you hear on
and
television.
There is nothing
and
there.
while it's going on,
it's
wait a second.
It's irresponsible.
And while it's going on, people are voting.
And they're not voting for Donald Trump.
Well, they are voting for Donald Trump in large numbers.
We're on television ourselves.
Yes.
And we're taking a break now. So when we come back, we're going to focus on the congressional races and the local races. So stay tuned. And welcome back, gentlemen. I know McDonald's is important, but we got to talk about the show tonight. So, in addition to the presidential election, there are very exciting races all over the state of Maryland, and one of those is to fill the Maryland US Senate seat of retiring Barbara Mikulski. Susan, 2 weeks ago, we interviewed Democratic candidate Chris Van Hollen. So, what is your view of the race between Van Hollen and Republican Maryland delegate Kathleen Slega?
It is going to be a blowout. Polls show him 30 points ahead. She is not gaining any ground. and I listened to one debate between the two of them on the Kojo Nambi show on WAMU, and she was worse than Donald Trump by saying wrong. The woman does not know national issues, and thankfully she's going to stay in the Maryland legislature where she belongs, and Chris is going to skate to victory.
Well, thank you, Susan. That's very insightful analysis. Phil, you're outgunned tonight. You're the lone Republican on the show, and you're going to have to make the case for Kathy Schlega.
Well, I'm the lone Republican. I'm proud to be, and I want to point out where Susan really does get it wrong, because on one hand, you said she's going to stay in the Maryland legislature, which she's clearly qualified to do, and she's shown in the way that she's campaigned, she's shown in the way that she's held that office and what she did leading up to that, being a mother, being a business owner, that she can cope on the national stage and is ready to tackle those issues. She's doing a great job, and I think we're going to see a lot higher turnout than these skewed polls have been showing in the negative way.
Have you heard her speak about the issues? She's
I've heard her
awful.
speak about all
And
the issues.
She
understands because she's worked with it not only as a state legislator, but also as an aide to Congressman Andy Harris, where she deals with dealt with those issues.
What is going to hurt her also is her love affair in the state of Maryland with Donald Trump, and that will get her nowhere in this state. She is losing votes because she thinks
Susan, when you look at a lot of the seismic shifts that Democrats have seen at the state level, places like Dundalk, where we elected a Republican senator for the first time in 75 years, that means that the coalition you thought you had that did not elect Anthony Brown.
Wait a minute.
That's not there to
Montgomery
elect.
County. We have the most votes. They're going to come out as is Baltimore City and Prince George's, and she's going to be wiped off the
Then
face
ask
of the
Anthony
earth.
Brown if it works.
Do you guys have an opinion about this race?
Let me say, carrying my water very well.
Let me say one thing. I know the Republican candidate. She is a good delegate, but that's where she is. She's a good delegate, and she's a good Republican in terms of a farm team. I mean, she's definitely somebody to keep thinking. She's not going to win this race. Chris is going to win. He should win. For many reasons. But anyway, I just want to say that.
We got 3 other races to talk about. Maryland District, 8th Congressional District race, the one that Chris Van Hollen has represented and is now leaving. And State Senator Jamie Raskin seems to be holding the advantage over Republican lawyer Dan Cox. Sam, this was a heavily contested race. Will any of the bitterness that went on in the primary hold over and weaken Raskin's chance to win this?
Casey, there was no business in the primary amongst the Democratic Party regulars who were very, very important in winning that election. It was a classic race of 2 wealthy candidates spending a lot of money to influence candidates that had no connections, grassroots connections within Montgomery County, nor background. Jamie won handily. The party is united, and he's going to win in that race.
Phil, your man Dan Cox.
Yeah.
Any hope?
Well, I'm not as bullish on him as I am on Kathy Schlega. No, I don't think he has that because he is a first-time candidate. It's hard to get the name recognition that he needs.
Does he run a good campaign?
Running good campaigns, tackling important issues.
All right, we got to keep going on. There is one race where a Republican candidate has been given an outside chance to win, and that's in the 6th Congressional District, where there is still some vocal opposition from the western Maryland counties angry over the redistricting process 4 years ago. John, this is the battle of the self-funded, where former Reagan official Ami Hober and incumbent John Delaney are squared off. What is your prediction there?
My prediction is John Delaney's going to win. But here's the simple truth. Presidential election year, you're going to have a better turnout. You're going to have more Democrats turning out in all of these districts, and that's going to mean that his very close race the last time around, he's going to do better this time. I think, let me just, a personal statement, I think it's outrageous that neither candidate lives in the 6th Congressional District.
They can look across the
They
street.
both live in Potomac, which is not in the 6th Congressional District. I think that's outrageous. I mean, and I think, I hate to say this about the Democratic candidate, this guy's had like 2 years to rent an apartment. 4 years.
4 years. He's in
4
his second
years to
term.
rent an apartment in the 6th Congressional District. John, go rent an apartment, because that's ridiculous that you do not reside in the district you represent.
Well,
I know
actually-
it's legal, but
Actually, John should rent an apartment in Annapolis because that's where he really wants to go. So, Phil, what do you think about this election?
Well, I agree with John about it's a problem that they both don't live in the district. What I think the real issue is the redistricting in the first place. Why were the districts drawn in such a ridiculous way that this is something that we have to talk about?
Let's talk about Hober. Does she have a chance?
She has a very good chance. Now, while there will be more Democrats turning out, Hober has been a good candidate. She speaks to a lot of the issues. She does it in a moderate way so that she can include the Western Maryland conservative portion and the moderates here in Montgomery County.
All right, and we're going to have to wrap it up, Susan. Thank you. Because if you want to learn more about Ami Hober, you can stay tuned to Channel 21, where we are rolling an interview that Susan and I conducted with her 2 weeks ago, along with the interview that we conducted with Representative Chris Van Hollen. Now, each election cycle, it's interesting to watch the most important, overlooked political race, and that is the Montgomery County School Board election. And considering that over 50% of the county budget is dedicated to the Montgomery County public school system, the fact that very scant attention is paid to these races is shocking. Susan, there are three seats being contested in this race. An at-large race where we have Phil Kaufman and Jeanette Dixon running. In District 2, our candidates incumbent Rebecca Somdrosky and Brandon Rippian. And finally, in District 4, the contestants are
Shebra.
Thank you for correcting me on air, Susan. And Anjali Pukan. What are your predictions?
Okay, I find it interesting. As you said, there's more money there and nobody pays attention. On this panel, there are 3 of you who have children. They're all grown. Phil lives in Virginia and I've never had kids. So it's interesting. People don't pay attention. I think Phil Kaufman will be reelected. He's running against a former principal, although she was a great principal. The school board has too many principals. In the case of Shebra Evans, she is a minority who has been worked very actively with the school system and deserves to be win. Rebecca Spandrowski is running against someone who has no real knowledge of the school system, and one of her passions has been children with handicaps, which is greatly needed. And Phil Kaufman, he's an incumbent, but he brings with a certain maturity and steadiness, and he has a budget knowledge that no one else has. So I think it'll be Kaufman, Smandrowski, and Evans.
Well, thank you, but I think you're overlooking Brandon.
He doesn't have much knowledge of the school board.
Did you read that in the Washington Post editorial, Susan?
No.
How do you know that for a fact? I mean, you speak
I
with
read
such
the
you
League
speak with
of-
such authority, and I think it's misleading to everyone.
I read the League
but
of
you don't
Women
know.
Voters,
All
and
right,
you said,
Sam,
what do I think?
What's your opinion on this race?
That's what I think, John.
I like to look at it from the big picture. And here's the big picture, folks. $2 billion is the budget for the school system. It's half the money. Got any idea what the school system spends on members of the Board of Education and their staff? $1.3 million. $2 billion, $1.3 million. Then there's another $500,000 for an auditor to audit the $1.3 that these guys spend. In the big picture, why do we need them? It's the superintendent of schools that runs the school system. All these guys are there for is to spend $1.8 billion. What do they do? As far as I'm concerned, I've never seen them do anything except years ago when we had the Rosemary Hills cluster debate, which I'm sure John remembers. Yep. One school board member fought the administration, school administration, Blair Ewing, who was the only member of the school board who was reelected the next year, who went on for a distinguished service to the county. The rest of them down the tubes. Let's vote to abolish the Board of Education. I think we could save $1.8 million.
Isn't it state law that we have to have a school board, John?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I think it's, yes.
Don't you believe in citizen participation?
But I'm sure there's a way to deal with it.
Board in the funding of the school board and the funding of the school system. Shouldn't we have citizen participation? Who's going to be our spokesperson if it's all left up to a unelected superintendent of schools?
Well, let's see. We have the PTA. Each school has its own PTA. We have the district PTAs.
The PTA,
all these people.
The PTA is a servant of the school union, is the teachers' union.
Excuse me. What do you think these guys are? They are absolute servants of MCEA.
Well, that
That's where
means
they
we should
come
have
from.
better candidates, but we shouldn't abandon the elective process.
We're not abandoning the process. We're just getting rid of a nub on
we're
our
out of
skin that
time.
we don't need.
There
All
may
right.
be maybe other forms of governance that might work.
But you know what? We have one more topic, and it's the most important topic we've talked about today, besides the presidential election, and that's the Question B ballot initiative, which would amend the county charter by imposing term limits on the county executive and the county council positions. John, what are your thoughts, and why has this become such an issue?
Number one, conventional wisdom is it's going to pass. Okay, people think that this is probably going to pass, which will really change the elections in Montgomery County in 2018. I mean, it will really shake things up at the county level. Number two, we are not the only county that has this. Okay, Prince George's County has limits. There are several other counties in Maryland that have limits. I think it is going to pass, and I think it's going to shake up the elections. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. So, I'll just
So
leave it
you
at that.
think the voters are fed up with,
Yep.
with the politicians?
Well, I don't think they're fed up. I think there's a whole mood in the electorate to, like, let's get some new blood in this whole process.
And with that, we're going to close. Stay tuned for parting shots. And welcome back now with parting shots. Leading off, Susan Heltemus.
First, I would like to extend my sincere sympathy to the family of Len Teitelbaum, who passed away this week. Marilyn, we have you in our thoughts and prayers. And this week, the Baltimore Sun exposed the fact that in Maryland, there are 3,500 untested rape kits, thanks to Karen Montgomery, who passed legislation. In December, Brian Frosch is going to give the official numbers county by county, and he is going to give guidelines at how to use these rape kits and if they should all be done. And in Montgomery County, there are at present 1,165 untested rape kits. That seems a bit high for me.
I don't understand the issue, Susan, so you'd have to explain it. These are kits that have been used by victims that haven't been tested?
That's right.
Is that what the issue is?
Untested rape
Okay,
kits.
Thank you. Sam, your parting shot.
Well, not a parting shot, but I want to give a lot of credit to folks at the Board of Elections because of early voting and absentee voting, and most of all to our citizens who seem to be going to our early voting sites across the state in huge numbers. I'm glad to see people exercise their voting rights. Keep it up, guys. Let's have the biggest turnout we've ever had.
Thank you, Sam. Phil Bell, your parting shot.
30 years ago, Mets left-hander Jesse Roscoe struck out Marty Barrett, so ending the 1986 World Series and providing one of the greatest wins in baseball history. It's great to look back on that, and I'm looking forward to another one.
Thank you, Phil. And John, your parting shot.
My parting shot is, along with Sam, I want to shout out to all the poll workers, not just the people who are there behind the desks checking names and everything, but the people outside. You know, I'm sure Susan's going to ask me to cover a poll at some point during early voting or on Election Day. It's a real exciting thing to do, to meet the people who are supporting their candidates. This election is not rigged. We all know that. And that's because of the people who are behind the desks and doing the right thing, and the people outside the polling places. You know, my shout out is to the electoral system. It's the greatest in the world, and everybody is part of it, and particularly those people who are at the polls handing out literature. It's just a cool thing to see and watch. I want Norman Rockwell to do a picture, if he were still alive, of those people handing out that stuff, because that's so America. So.
Well, thank you, John. And I want to thank the panel for being here. You know, this has been the most unusual of years, particularly for election years, 2016. I don't think anyone can remember anything like it, and I'm not sure if anybody wants to repeat it. We have one more show before the election. We're very excited about that because the race does seem to be narrowing. And even though there are dire predictions on both sides, we're going to have an interesting 10 days. So for 21 this week, I want to thank the viewers for tuning in. Tune in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting local talk show. I'm Casey Aiken.